YouTube has been around since what? 2006, 2007? Well over a decade. And in all that time, they've been attacking channels like mine nonstop. Now, the thing is about this channel in particular that you guys are listening to me on, this is the first channel that I've had that's gotten over 25,000 subscribers in over a decade. Every time that my channel would get something like 20,000 subscribers, YouTube would immediately decide, oh, this channel has violated community standards and needs to be terminated. And it's not just the old, there were some flag campaigns going on. This was YouTube itself. Now, it got my attention when this channel was not shut down after 25,000. I haven't changed the message. You guys know I haven't changed anything that I've done. And yet YouTube did not censor this channel as soon as it hit 20,000 subscribers. That didn't slip my attention. What also didn't slip my attention was the fact that now YouTube has decided that they're going to join forces with Facebook and Twitter, and they're going to start deplatforming people. Of course, you got the three big social media hubs, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, where practically everybody goes to, and this has been a failure on the part of the public. Instead of making sure that there would at least be platforms that at least would make some sort of pretense, try in a pro forma sense to stand up for something resembling free speech. Instead, what you've had is YouTube being a free fire zone for white supremacist trash. You had garbage like PewDiePie attacking black people every chance that little piece of garbage got, and YouTube didn't seem to see a problem with that. Nothing done about him. And don't give me the, oh, it's because he's got so many subs, he's like the #1 channel on YouTube, or he had agreements with Disney and this, that, and a third. There are lots of people who had corporate arrangements and agreements. But you notice that if you're black, on the other hand, it doesn't matter how few or how many subs you've got. The issue for PewDiePie was not what the world he was connected to, who he knew. What it came down to is he's white and he was attacking black people, and that's all he needed to do. But in over a decade, YouTube never actually decided to make the mistake of qualifying, giving examples. What exactly counts as hate speech? What exactly counts as this violating community standards? Because they never said. And the reason why is nobody had been talking about these websites as being public utilities. There's a lot of layers to this onion, and we're going to be peeling back a few of them. But one of the things that's changed is people have been talking about places like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube due to their sheer size, that they would become public utilities, which means that basically they're going to have a lot of their autonomy stripped from them and have the government telling them what they can and cannot do to a certain extent. If you look at what it is that YouTube's doing, as I've always told you, white supremacy believes in duality. They don't believe in just showing you their cards. They believe in trying to misdirect you. There's the public face of what they do, and then there's the real face of it. Example, as I've given in the past, there's a big difference between what it is that Bob Iger does and then what it is the people who own Disney do. Bob Iger's job is to keep the money coming in. That's the public face, the face that people, that 99% of the public's concerned with. Only 1% is actually concerned with what Disney shareholders are doing, and their interest is anything but money. They've already got enough money. Money greases the ego, and it may be how they fund their operations, but it's not the goal. The goal is social engineering for big corporations like Disney. You have people like Kevin Riley over at News Corp. His goal may be to have the most viewers, or Peter Chernin, I should say, is the guy over there at News Corp these days. His job may be to figure out how many people he can get to watch Fox. But do you think that Rupert Murdoch is driven by ratings? No, Rupert Murdoch wants everything that money can't buy. As far as he's concerned, he's not in the business of entertainment. He's in the business of mass mind control. And the same thing goes with YouTube. On the surface, there are those who will say, and there is an argument to be made for this, it's just a matter of it's not the complete picture. Half the picture is that YouTube would very much like to stop all of this political talk, all of this serious talk. What YouTube wants is for people to basically talk about video games and movies. Talk about video games and movies. Well, why that? Because that benefits the corporations, it benefits the media companies, it benefits the movie studios and the TV networks and the streaming platform services. Everybody's just going to sit around talking about their TV shows, talking about their movies, what you like, what you don't like. And that's the way of dumbing the public down. You make it where you, as Dr. Noam Chomsky beautifully put it, among the standard tools that the media uses for the sake of trying to control the public, for the sake of manufacturing consent, a lot of tools come into play, such as controlling emphasis and tone, selection of topics, selection of who gets to speak, but the most important thing is the bounding of debate, to make sure that it never goes beyond certain pre-prescribed boundaries, making sure that it stays within certain predetermined limits. So what happens is you get some white supremacist right-wing wacko, and then you get some lukewarm right-of-center so-called moderate who claims that they're left-wing, and that's basically what you get. You're getting a hardcore right-wing message, and you're getting a soft-core right-wing message, but you're still getting a right-wing message no matter what. They just tell you that it's something else, like Joe Biden. Joe Biden's considered to be left-wing in the eyes of the chumps over the Financial Times. But we, of course, know that Joe Biden is right-wing as they come. Well, PukeTube would very much like to make it where the public gets dumbed down, and that YouTube is able to maximize its profit with these media companies by being a place where only customers are going to show up and all they're going to do is talk about products. That's where this is going. At least that's where it's going as far as the public face of what YouTube does. But do you truly believe that the kind of white supremacists, the out-of-control psychopathic racists who run YouTube, you really believe that their agenda stops merely at trying to contain any and all discussions to whatever is going on at the multiplex this weekend? Or what new video game is going to debut this month? Or what streaming TV show, what long-form dramatic television show is the hot new thing? No. They're looking and going, we want a hell of a lot more than that. You know that Google owns YouTube. And you know damn well that Google's concerned with a hell of a lot more than AdSense buy rates. No, this is about more than just merely trying to make the audience, the people who come to YouTube, into nothing more than a massive echo chamber. They're going to be conditioned and threatened and coerced and cajoled, where they understand when you come to YouTube, the only thing you better be talking about are consumer products. Should you or should you not buy it? And you want to be careful about how popular you get. If you start saying negative things, you might find your channel getting throttled. You might find that you've violated community standards in some way or another. Or at the very least, what you're going to find is you don't show up in people's mentions. Your subscribers don't get notified whenever your video goes up. That's going to be what happens publicly. But as for the other part, which is what YouTube is truly concerned with, this platform is shaking things up. Too many people are listening to the wrong voices. They have never needed any community guidelines to be spelled out in order to censor the new voices of black media. But what they do need in this landscape where more and more people are saying that platforms this large, places where everybody pretty much has to go to because they've gobbled up so much market share, the reality is that these places ought to be public utilities, which means that YouTube is not going to have the ability to basically arbitrarily decide we're going to maximize profits by making ourselves into an echo chamber for corporate interests. You get to talk about Star Wars, you get to talk about Avengers, you get to talk about Call of Duty, you get to talk about Game of Thrones, and well, that's pretty much it. You get to talk about whatever our corporate sponsors are selling. You get to talk about their products. And that's it. Well, what about politics? Well, we got CNN and MSNBC for that, and that pretty much covers everything. Well, a little bit of Fox News, too. That pretty much covers everything. That's where this is going. This is just the thin end of the wedge. What's happened is too many people who are clearly not on the take to the white media's interests, they are speaking and too many people are listening. And this is about trying to put the genie back into the bottle. This is about trying to turn back the hands of time. We need to go back to a point when these people weren't able to speak, nobody was listening, and they weren't threatening anything that mattered. This is the empire striking black. Now, to return to my original point, YouTube in over a dozen years has never actually spelled out what allegedly constitutes violations of hate speech policy. Damn sure ain't attacking black people. Their entire channels been up for years and years and years that have done nothing but attack black people, that have done nothing but justify the killing of black people, that have celebrated the killing of black people, and YouTube ain't done a damn thing about it. But they understand that with this new landscape where there are more people who are starting to say YouTube ought to be regulated, places like YouTube ought to be regulated in some way. Facebook actually gets a slap on the wrist from Congress, if only rhetorically. And here they are deciding that a good way that they're going to try to use to not only burnish their smeared and their besmirched reputation is by deplatforming people like Louis Farrakhan and Alex Jones as cover for deplatforming Louis Farrakhan. They've decided that if we're going to be doing that, and if we're going to be distracting people with that, well, we could open ourselves up to the threat of litigation. In fact, the threat of litigation is pretty much guaranteed. Well, we need to be able to say that we weren't singling these people out. Oh, why? This is just our policy. Yeah, except you never actually say what the policy is. It's very arbitrary. You're just arbitrarily choosing people who you don't like or who are saying things you don't approve of. It has nothing to do with whether or not they violated your rules. It has everything to do with whether or not you personally like what they're saying and whether or not too many people are listening. If they're having an impact and the discussion, the social discussion is actually being changed somehow or being affected by these unsanctioned voices, well, that violates community standards. What's the community standard? White power wins, and white power is never questioned. That's the community standard. In over a dozen years, I have never called for violence against anyone. There are lots of people who've called for violence against black people. I have never, ever claimed that anyone's superior, that black people are superior to or better than. But there's lots of folks who have been making their daily bread by running black people into the ground, full stop. And YouTube has been giving them a platform and making sure to promote their channels and making sure that these people grow, while at the same time attacking channels like mine every time that my channel gets 20,000 subs. For over a dozen years has been going on. And before anyone gets stupid, because I know we got some slow folk out there, unfortunately, with a group this large, you're bound to have a couple of slow coasts wander into the room. Some of these mouth-breathing, drooling on their shoes morons who would say, well, the solution is to get yourself a couple of channels. Look, that's the kind of thing that would work for a white person, but it ain't going to work for a black person. With black folks, the goal of these platforms is they attack you, period. Their goal is to make sure that you're under attack simply because. YouTube is not here for the purpose of trying to promote free speech of any sort. It is all about white supremacist speech. That's sanctioned. And we know that it's sanctioned because YouTube does nothing against those who engage in that kind of thing. But if you're a black person who simply says that black people have the right to defend themselves, that violates community standards. That violates community standards. Okay, that black people are not to be just walking targets for anyone who decides to run up on them. That violates community standards. So what's the community standard that's violated? That you're not going to just stand there while people kill you. That violates community standards. So you know what YouTube is all about. It doesn't matter if they give a listing of, oh, well, here's the groups that we don't allow for you to engage in hate speech against. And notice the very first one that they put up there, age. Is there anybody running around who's talking about you want to kill people who are 1 year old? Or we want to kill people who are 80 years old or what have you? Why would you list age first? Why would you list age first? That's YouTube telegraphing something, which is by order of prioritization, we're going to make it clear how this works and exactly what we're concerned about. So they list age first. Second, they list caste. While there is a racial caste system in America, at least in form, there is no caste system in name. So what are they talking about? India? India is the only place that has a caste system. Has there been some flood of anti-caste bigotry and racism that's been flooding through YouTube? Because this is the first I've ever heard of it. Hate speech against people based on disability. Again, where the hell is this coming from? And why are these things being listed first? Last time I checked, when the great YouTube adpocalypse went down, didn't have a damn thing to do with age, caste, or disability. It had mostly to do with race, under the guise of anti-Semitism, but the same dang thing. So what the hell are they talking about? Okay, they get to ethnicity. Notice they're not saying they're doing everything they can to soft pedal race. Why the world are you not listing race first? Because as far as they're concerned, the new voices of black media have come to define we've pushed white supremacy to the forefront, and YouTube's trying to suppress it again. They're trying to cover it up. Damn, everybody's saying white supremacy. We got to change and make it about something else. Well, what are we going to make it about? Gender identity. Gender identity. Can somebody give me a definition of that? YouTube doesn't supply one. Next, hate speech based on nationality. Now, that one right there, nationality, that to me sounds like don't say anything regarding Israel. That's what it sounds like to me. If you decide, well, you know what? We definitely don't want anyone accusing us of anti-Semitism, so we're going to make sure, because there are also Jewish people around the world who are opposed to the policies of the Israeli government, and we want to be specific about that. So we'll simply say Israel, because the truth is, it's not about Jewish people at all. It's about the policies of Israel. Nationality, that's nationality. Well, nobody's saying kill the Israelis or even the Israeli government. Nobody's saying harm the Israeli. Well, you said something regarding Israel and that's nationality. And okay, well, what about when people say garbage about the Haitians? Or people say stuff about Nigerians? Or people say anything about Somalians or Ethiopians, huh? Well, surely that violates YouTube's hate speech policy based on nationality. Well, that falls under social commentary, buddy. And next we have race, the one that is clearly the real issue here. Too many people are calling out white supremacy, and YouTube is having trouble circling the wagons. Their big corporate buddies, their corporate pals, who they've been protecting in the broadcast media and trying to run interference for, those guys are not able to hold back all the changes taking place online, and they're mad at YouTube precisely because of the fact that too many voices are being heard. Too many voices have brought race to the forefront, to the point now where major presidential elections are now being affected by it. And now you see YouTube is not at all some disinterested third party sitting on the sidelines, not terribly concerned with the outcome. No, they are active participants. They are part of Team White Supremacy. This is their official declaration of it. When you have the biggest issue in the media of the last few years being about race, everything from the murder of Trayvon Martin to the Confederate flag that became an issue not because of what happened in Charlottesville, but because of Dylann Roof carrying out a massacre at Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston. That's when the Confederate flag finally became verboten after 150 years. That's when it happened, but the white media has been trying to say, oh, well, this happened following the Charlottesville riot. But you also had killings at Jewish synagogues and such. So race has been at the forefront of the issues, culminating in the issue of tangibles for those of us who came out of American slavery. All of this revolving around race, Donald Trump and all of his xenophobic nonsense, which is not anything new. He's been doing it his entire adult life. So race should have come first. Why didn't YouTube list that first? Because this is them sending a message, and the message is, we know that race is actually a code for anti-black bigotry. And we're going to make it clear that ain't our top priority. In fact, we're putting it in your face. This ain't a priority at all. Gender identity ranks higher than race, because we know that race, if we start cracking down on that, well, that would be something that would actually protect black people. So we want to make it clear that ain't no top priority. Next, they keep talking about immigration status. You can pretty much fill in the blanks on that one. But basically what it means is if you tell people that black folks who came out of slavery have been for 100 and something odd years, we have been seeing our interest absolutely ignored and subverted and pushed to the side and being told, well, it's more about immigrants than about you guys. Immigration has been used as a weapon against black people who came out of slavery. Well, you shouldn't say that. So notice how all of these little things that they're doing, this is tailor-made to attack black people who call themselves actually trying to tell some truth on the most noteworthy, certainly the most widely used and most widely accessed social media platform on the planet. All of this is just crib noted to go against point by point against what it is that the new voices of black media have been saying and advocating, and the truths that have been told here. That's what this has all been about. Now, of course, we're going to skip the rest of this stuff. Sex, gender. Gee, didn't we already cover gender identity? Sexual orientation. Didn't we? I could have sworn we already covered that one. Victims of a major violent event and their kin. No hate speech against them, right? So I guess that the people who were cheering the murder of Trayvon Martin, I guess that they're going to be, finally, YouTube's going to do something about them, right? And the bastards who tried to claim that the Mother Emanuel Church massacre was a bunch of crisis actors, I'm sure we're going to see something against. No, that only happened after Sandy Hook. That only happened after the Parkland shooting. Okay, well, that's what matters, because that really wasn't against black people. See, if you're killing black people, well, it's okay to question that. You know, just like with Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney back in the 60s, when people like Joe Biden's mentor, Senator James Eastland, were going to President Lyndon Johnson and telling him, that's just a hoax put up by the NAACP to try to make the good white Christians of the South look bad. That was the original crisis actors hoax. What the white supremacists did against Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney. And last time I checked, there was no YouTube at that time, but for some damn reason, though, you had the white media that didn't call James Eastland out on that, and you had white politicians and the government didn't call him out on that, and you didn't have the clergy call him out on that either, and there wasn't a social outcry either. Gee, I wonder why. So you got victims of a major violent event. Well, something if you call yourself casting aspersions on them or otherwise saying something disrespectful regarding that, why, YouTube will take action against you as long as the victims aren't black. Now, if the victims are black, on the other hand, well, you know, this is part of rather pointed social political debate, you know, that doesn't fall outside of the guy. Well, you can go ahead and say that Trayvon Martin was a thug. In fact, you can say that every police shooting of a black person is 100% justified, no matter, even if the person who pulls the trigger goes to prison, you can go ahead and say it was justified anyway. You can go ahead and cheerlead and praise the murders of black people all the live long day. YouTube will do nothing about that. Those are victims of major violent events, but not in the eyes of YouTube, because the community guidelines, the community standards are white supremacy at YouTube. And veteran status. What in God's name is that even supposed to mean? This lets you know the kind of knots and pretzels, the kind of tortured logic that YouTube is employing here. But what they're doing is they're trying to bury the real agenda amongst all of these needless details, lost in the fine print. But truth be told, I don't want to make too much of a big deal out of this, but those of us who are the new voices of black media, YouTube has never needed to codify what the specific policy is that they would censor us under. They've been doing it the whole time, even without one. But under these circumstances in the current climate, they are concerned, I believe, about the threat of litigation now, because what's happening is what they're doing is they're getting bolder about this. Now, the talking point is going to be hate speech and Russian bots. Wait a minute. When's the last time I've heard Russian bots? Oh, yeah. All those people talking about descendants of slaves in America and talking about reparations. They're a bunch of bots. Ain't that what Malcolm Nance said? Malcolm Nance, who, by the way, is just a giggling, smiling, buck-toothed jackass. And instead of spending his time talking about us and we and our government and we and the spy business, when most of the people in intelligence think that Malcolm Nance is a joke, and the other half have better sense to even talk about him. But they will say that the new voices of black media are bots. And now you see that there's a program at work here. There's an agenda that's playing itself out here. Now, YouTube clearly feeling that they're going to need some rhetorical basis upon which to defend themselves if and when they get dragged into court. And this is not new, by the way. You had Rick Scott, or whatever the hell his name is, down in Florida, when it came time to talk about black people who had been the new Jim Crow of the South, where they would have it where any black person who's convicted of a felony, knows the word I'm using, black people, it doesn't apply to white people, but if you're black and you get convicted of a felony, why? They can purge you from the voter rolls legally. And next thing you know, every black person who got accused of jaywalking, all of a sudden there was misdemeanor jaywalking and felony jaywalking. They would have crimes, the exact same act would have a criminal, they would have a felony statute and they would have a misdemeanor statute for the exact same act. If you're black, it's rape. If you're white, it's sexual misconduct. If you're black, it's murder. If you're white, it's manslaughter. Though, depending on the circumstances, it could be just littering without a license. I told you about that in the White on White Crime series, about how you had all of these offenders who, based on the color of their skin, they not only had a rap sheet long as your arm, but what would happen is if they were arrested, the charges got thrown out. People committing murder. And it would always get downgraded to something, and that something would always be a misdemeanor, never a felony. And Rick Scott understood that you had people who were about to challenge what was clearly a racist policy, and they were going to challenge it in court, and it just occurred to him at the last minute, wait a minute, this is clearly a violation of due process, and man, they got us on that one. This is a violation of due process. They're being deprived of their right to vote without due process. Well, I'm going to claim that we have a governor's board, and I'll even I'll stick my head in the door on one or two of their meetings and claim that, see, we have due process here. These niggers, they have the ability to go ahead and challenge their being stripped of their right to vote, and they got due process. And of course, they showed the video, and Rick Scott simply said to every single one of them, nope, we've already, as far as we're concerned, your right to vote will not be reinstated. It's not going to be restored. And what's the basis for it? You just got told this guy had been convicted of a crime he didn't commit, so what's your basis? Well, I don't have one, but I'm just saying I don't. Yeah, that's what he has to say for legal purposes. Because the second that he says that he has a basis for it, now he's giving a reason that can be used in court. And that's what this was about. It was basically Rick Scott carrying out some half-assed, half-baked attempt at an end run around the Constitution. Not that he needed it in a white supremacist sewer like the United States, but it just goes to show, at all levels, the bad guys understand fully that they have to try to put forward some sort of pretense. They got to try to do something to justify what they're doing, even if only pro forma. And YouTube is operating out of the exact same playbook. So not only are they doing this as a way of making sure people see, YouTube's doing something about all this hate speech. Well, except against black people. That's okay. But now it's a matter of, now they got to do something that they've never done before. They got to go into detail about it. Because the truth of the matter is, they have up until now been getting away with the fact that not a sufficient critical mass of people have been saying YouTube needs to be regulated. They're too big, too powerful. We're not going to say that they should go away or even that they should be broken up, but the government should step in and regulate them. This is YouTube's way of trying to get around that. We don't need to be regulated. Why? We've spelled out the policy. People know exactly what the policy is. Now they're feeling like they got to do that. Bastards. They go on to state other types of content that violates this policy, dehumanizing individuals or groups by calling them subhuman, comparing them to animals, insects, pests, disease, or any other non-human entity. So when you got people who are running around saying that black people are basically a genetic dead end of primate, which you can find that all over YouTube. Apparently, that doesn't violate YouTube's policies. Gee, I wonder if that applies to anyone else. Praise or glorify violence against individuals or groups based on the attributes noted above. Well, we've already gone into how YouTube don't give a damn about that where black people are concerned. Use racial, ethnic, religious, or other slurs where the primary purpose is to promote hatred. Gee, does that apply to the people who use racial code words such as thug or super predator or talking about out of control black crime stats? Does that qualify? or who will tell out and out lies to justify the killing of black people, just to say, oh, well, so and so was killed. Well, if they didn't commit this crime, they probably did something else. Use stereotypes that incite or promote hatred based on any of the attributes noted above. Do those stereotypes include these phony baloney white supremacists made up out of whole cloth crime stats? Those promote stereotypes, so that qualifies, doesn't it? And the entire point is to justify hatred, to justify violence against black people. No need to promote it because it's already going on. No need to encourage it, it's already going on. And YouTube does their part to help encourage it. But the question is, can you justify it so that there's no punishment that should follow? The natural punishment that ought to follow won't follow. Well, you got to justify it. So we're going to make up some crime stats. We're going to just go ahead and pretzel some crimes, like Heather McDonald with her fiction book, The War on Cops, where she tries to claim that black people are responsible for most of the killings of police officers, which, by the way, she came up with this pretzeled example. Her little bit of rhetoric was so pretzeled that nobody could even repeat it. Basically, what she was trying to do was the old per capita lie. And I think I've shot that one down about a dozen times with my white on white crime series. But when it comes to using stereotypes to incite or promote hatred against people based on race, well, that does include Heather McDonald, right? That includes these clowns running around with their phony baloney black on white crime stats, right? That includes Donald Trump because he was quoting that stuff and spreading that garbage. So that includes him too, right? Of course not. Oh, but they also say this can take the form of speech, text, or imagery promoting these stereotypes or treating them as factual. Now, remember, all the stuff that they're naming, this ain't going to be used against anybody other than black people. That's all what they're actually doing is setting this up. It's kind of like the emergency manager law in Michigan. They tried to pass it as one big law at one time, but the voters of Michigan shot it down in a voter referendum. They shot that down. So what happened was the Republican legislature in Michigan, they passed the exact same law only in parts. They would pass one part here and call it the such and such Executive Review Act, or they pass another part over here and call it the Fiscal Responsibility Statute, and they pass another part over here. Next thing you know, they had in pieces all of it on the books. Instead of passing it all at once, now they had all of it passed piecemeal. And that's what YouTube is doing. They're not going to come out and say, we are banning anybody who speaks about black empowerment. Anybody who gets out here talking about tangibles for black people, who talks about putting a stop to anti-black violence and anti-black racism. We're going to make sure that you guys are gone. We're going to censor you and we're putting you on notice. We're coming after you. They don't do that. Instead, what they do is they put it in pieces. Our entire message broken up into pieces, but when it comes time to come at us, especially should they get dragged into court, all of a sudden you're going to be seeing them show you exactly how it all comes together. Next, they talk about the claim that individuals or groups are physically or mentally inferior. Well, as long as you're not black, YouTube is full and overflowing with content from out of control anti-black racists who are constantly saying that black people are mentally inferior, that black people are all, if you have a black person who gets into college, well, they were an affirmative action enrollee. Or if you got a black person who gets a job, well, that was affirmative action. You know what that is. Oh, well, black people, they score lower on standardized testing. Wrong. Well, black people are just mentally deficient. Wrong. And constantly trying to talk about that black people are more susceptible to this or that disease. Black people, if to the extent that black people have higher rates of, say, heart disease or such, these are all stress-related maladies. When you live under white supremacy and you're being denied your basic rights and you're constantly being attacked, constantly being maligned, like YouTube carries out, you're constantly being oppressed, constantly being harmed, constantly being threatened. And that every time that you take measures to defend yourself or to stand up for yourself or speak up for yourself, you get attacked for that. Yeah, that tends to take a toll on you. So this garbage about black people are more likely to have this, that, and the third, almost all of it usually are stress-related maladies. It's everybody else who has diseases that are actually based either on environmental or genetic factors. Black people, by and large, are not, yet who gets mentioned most when it comes time to talk about all of this healthcare stuff? Who do they make sure to mention, well, African Americans are more likely to get this, that, or other, or to have this disease or this disorder. And well, what about the diseases and such the white people are likely to get? Well, that's just the general society. We don't say white, we just say general society. Yeah, they'll say black when it comes time to talk about something negative, they'll say black specifically. But when it comes to white people, they don't say that at all. So is YouTube going to be cracking down on that? Of course not. Why? This is just general information about healthcare. They go on to say this includes statements that one group is less than another, calling them less intelligent, less capable, or damaged. Well, gee, I wonder when YouTube's going to crack down on that because they've never cracked down on it before. Allege the superiority of a group over those with any of the attributes noted above to justify violence, discrimination, segregation, or inclusion. Dealt with that. Conspiracy theories ascribing evil, corrupt, or malicious intent to individuals or groups based on any of the attributes noted above. Now, I told you about how Facebook had this little policy where they would go after anybody who tried to claim that if you said anything that was critical of white males, Facebook was going to crack down on you. Your channel could be suspended. You could be shut down. But if you said anything against black people, either black men, black women, black boys, black girls, black elderly, black whatever, if you said something against black people, well, that was okay. They made it clear. They are going to declare that white males, you can't say anything against them, but black people, you can say anything against them that you want. This is what's going on here. You start saying white supremacy. You start talking about white racism. You start talking about white bigotry and white hatred. You start talking about the benign neglect of the white government and the white media. Well, you're talking about white people. That violates community standards. You're ascribing evil, corrupt, and malicious intent to this group. There it is right there for you. There it is spelled out right there for you. That's the no talking about white supremacy rule. That's it right there. Because if and when this goes to court, they want to be able to point to it and say, well, we got a policy here. Well, in that case, then, what are we going to be saying when people try to claim that black people are out to kill white people? That there's some black on white race war going on. Hey, what about Heather McDonald's book? The black people are out to kill all the cops. So we're going to be going after her because she ascribes evil, corrupt, or malicious intent to black people, specifically black men, right? We're going after her on that, right? Of course not. Next, they talk about call for the subjugation or domination over individuals or groups based on any of the attributes noted above. Well, there's no need for white supremacy to declare the subjugation or domination of black people. They've already gotten the upper hand. At this point, it's just a matter of doing whatever they can to hold on to it. So notice how that rule is not something that can actually be practical. White supremacy need not go out and call for the subjugation of black people. They've already got us subjugated and oppressed. They need not call for black people to be dominated. They've already dominated black people. They've already got us under their iron heel. At this point, they're just fighting a war to maintain that control, to maintain the subjugation and domination of black people. So a rule like that is worthless, and YouTube knows that. And next they put in deny that a well-documented violent event took place. Hey, how about slavery? What about people who deny that slavery took place? That, well, slavery was nothing more than black immigrants coming from Africa. It wasn't slavery, it was black immigration. And hey, slavery wasn't all about whips and rape and selling people's children to the four corners of the country. Why, slaves lived lives of quiet dignity. Well, when they weren't howling in agony and being raped and murdered, well, the rest of the time they were quiet because Massa said, I hear one peep and I'll come and kill all you niggers. So obviously that's what was going on. See, when it comes to denying slavery and saying that slavery wasn't as bad as all that and trying to downgrade and minimize the horrors of slavery, that's not going to be something that violates YouTube's community standards. Well, that's just normal academic skepticism. It's part of the free-flowing exchange of ideas when it comes to historical events. Okay, well, what are they talking about? Well, you could say, well, clearly they're talking about the Holocaust. Well, give me a king-size break. Since when the hell has YouTube ever decided we're going to give a platform to people who deny the Holocaust? You can deny slavery all day long. Well, you people say 200 million. Well, we think the number was probably closer to 5 million, maybe. In fact, maybe closer to 2 million. Well, it was actually probably 2 Negroes and a dog that got brought over, buddy. Now, that is violating the most well-known, the most violent event in human history was slavery in the United States. And yet YouTube is a free fire zone for anyone and everyone who wants to deny that one. And YouTube will encourage it. They'll promote those videos, make sure that they get seen, prominently placed, make sure that they're put into people's suggestion bars, whether you want it or not. They make sure that that stays on point. They want to make sure that they promote that. Oh, if you want to talk about Mother Emanuel Church, well, those are crisis actors. Well, people have different perspectives on this thing, and we would not want to curtail somebody's right to speak. I mean, if you don't like it, the answer to bad speech is more speech. Yeah, that's the kind of crap that happens around YouTube's offices or Google's offices, but only where black people are concerned. Next, YouTube gets to the part that got my attention. They actually give examples, and this is what really shocked me. I'm sitting here going, so YouTube must really be worried. They must really be scared about the threat of litigation or the threat of some sort of government regulation to go this far with it, because they ain't done it in a dozen years. And it wasn't because it had slipped their minds. It was a matter of they just wanted to exercise fiat, white supremacist fiat. And say, well, we don't have to explain anything. What you did, we're terminating your channel because it violates community standards, buddy. Well, what community standard was violated? Well, we said it did. In fact, we don't even have to say anything. Now they're scared that maybe they have to. Now here are examples of hate speech not allowed on YouTube. I'm glad this violent event happened. They got what they deserved, referring to persons with the attributes noted above. Great. So when people run around saying that Trayvon Martin should have been murdered, I'm glad he was killed, that thug got what he had coming, that is going to violate YouTube community standards, right? Because you're calling for violence against someone simply because they're black. And all of these murders of black people that have taken place, whether it was Sandra Bland or whether it was Eric Garner or Terrence Crutcher or whomever, well, when these people say that Akai Gurley was a thug and just the automatic, well, they got what they deserved. So YouTube's going to be cracking down on that, right? I don't think so. Next, they give more examples. Get out there and punch a person with attributes noted above. Oh, so I wonder if they're going to be saying that it's Gavin McInnes. Him and his Proud Boys. I mean, notice how they don't spell it out and tell you exactly who it was that prompted them to this. No, they're leaving plenty of wiggle room. That's the entire point. Get out there and punch a black person. Well, somebody needs to do something about these Negroes. Does that include Donald Trump? Donald Trump was saying that he'd go ahead and attack those protesters. I'll pay your legal expenses. He never did, by the way. So that goes for Donald Trump, right? You have never, ever had the New Voices of Black media ever say anything like this, and yet we're the main ones who get censored. Why? If we don't advocate violence, if we do not advocate the inferiority of anybody else, if we're not out there trying to do test runs for attacking people or justifying attacks against people, then why is it that we're the main ones who get attacked? Because this is not about any sort of alleged attacks on any of these other groups. This is about making sure that YouTube remains a safe space for white supremacy. Next, YouTube gives a quote, everyone in such and such group are all criminals and thugs. That's one that they threw in because as white supremacy has always had to do, they've always had to sprinkle some sugar on their crap. That's where that comes from. That's just this is the so you can't say that we're excluding the white supremacists. See, we put in there, we said criminals and thugs. See, yeah, but it's never going to be enforced. That's just the CYA provision that they're putting in there. In case anybody says, obviously they're going to figure out immediately that we're protecting white supremacy. So we need some rhetorical cover. We need some language that so we can say, see, we called out this criminals and thugs. See, we recognize this. See, this is about everybody. We're not singling out black people. See, that's what's going on here. That's why they put that in there. That's the CYA provision. Give themselves some rhetorical cover. Next, person with attributes noted above is scum of the earth. People with attributes noted above are a disease. People with attributes noted above are less intelligent than us because their brains are smaller. Now again, none of this stuff is new. It's been around for over a decade now. You've had white supremacists who have been having free reign on YouTube, trafficking in every manner of anti-black rhetoric and vernacular and vitriolic garbage that you can imagine, and YouTube ain't had a problem with it. Our existence is threatened by group with any of the attributes noted above, so we should drive them out at every chance we get. Gee. Just keep in mind, they're going to leave that last part out. When it comes to the new voices of black media, it's simply going to be our existence is threatened by white supremacy. You just violated community standards, buddy. So they're not going to care about the last part. You don't have to actually say do anything or even hint at doing anything or even insinuate do anything. Just the very fact that you're saying that black people are being threatened, that's supposed to be a provision that's aimed at us. Now, this little line is specifically aimed at making sure that black people do not say anything regarding immigration. This is the don't you say anything regarding immigration. You don't say that black people are not being given any sort of fair shake in the society. Instead, we're going to have it just be that, well, black people are no more disadvantaged than anyone else. Why? These immigrants come in here and, well, look, immigration has been used as a weapon against black people in this country and has been for over 150 years. Starting with the first European migrants who came in. You think they let the Irish in because they liked the Irish? They let the Irish in because they thought they could be used as a demographic lever against black people. And that policy has been going on ever since. Yeah, they had up the signs that said no dogs or Irish need apply, but that's okay. It was just a matter of hazing the new group until they get on code. But that's what this is about. Our existence is threatened by, this is the, just in case those niggers say anything regarding immigration. Don't say anything about immigration. That's what that is. You see how this works, don't you? Group with any of the attributes noted above has an agenda to run the world and get rid of us. That's the don't say anything against white supremacy provision. That's why I got it highlighted. That's it right there. They're putting it out there in black and white. Don't say anything about white supremacy. Facebook went ahead and set the little precedent. Yeah, we know if you guys say that white males control the money and the wealth, well, as far as we're concerned, that violates hate speech. Okay, well, in that case then, or I guess you're going to censor the U.S. Census and the IRS and any university who just brings forward those basic demographic facts. We're going to go ahead and ignore that, right? You're speaking against the group, buddy. This is Nazi Germany. These are the Nuremberg rules of YouTube. That's what's going on here. This is YouTube's own version of the Nuremberg laws. Not only are we codifying that we're going to attack you, but we're also going to criminalize you speaking up for yourself. That's what this is about. You cannot speak against the attacks against you. We're going to censor that. And we're going to attack you if you speak up in your own defense. That's what group with any of the attributes noted above is. When it comes time to use this in practice, it is solely going to be the do not say anything against white supremacy rule. That's what this is going to be. And as for these others, it's pretty much the same thing as you heard before. Such and such group is a form of mental illness that needs to be cured. person with any of the attributes shouldn't be educated in schools because they shouldn't be educated at all. All the so-called victims of this violent event are actors. Yeah, unless it's Mother Emanuel Church. Unless it's black people who have been slaughtered in mass, yeah, you can't say that they're crisis actors unless they're black people. No one was hurt, and this is just a false flag. I've already given you the history of that going all the way back to the 60s. When it comes to attacks on black people, they're never genuine. And if they are genuine, well, they're never unjustified. So that's what YouTube is putting in place, and that's what they're doing there. That's why they're actually putting this into specifics now. They're giving their examples, and the reason why is they want to give themselves legal cover because they know that at some point there's going to be some lawsuits that will inevitably come out of this. And they got to give themselves cover. They got to make sure that when people point out, hey, YouTube, you guys never actually said what violates community standards. Well, no, now we're spelling it out, buddy. Now we're spelling it out. Yeah, but keeping it just vague enough where you're giving yourself all sorts of room. And you're also making it very clear that when it comes to black people, well, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yeah, the rule is there. But you can call black people criminals and thugs. Well, you didn't say everyone. See, you just said NFL players. See how that works? You just said NFL players. You just said rappers. You just said these kids in the inner city. You see, you didn't say all black people. You just said, well, look at those people in the Baltimore uprising, just a bunch of criminals and thugs. See how that works? Very few, if anybody, is silly enough to say all black people are criminals and thugs. So a rule like that, everyone in such and such group are criminals and thugs. YouTube already wrote a rule like that with the escape clause written right into it. I've been telling you for over a decade now. This idea of the racist run around like Bruce Willis in Die Hard with a Vengeance with a sandwich board that says, I hate niggers, that kind of person practically doesn't exist. You can go back to the founders of the United States, all of them slave owners. Can you find for me where Thomas Jefferson actually called black people niggers? Can you find for me where Thomas Jefferson said that all black people were porch monkeys or some other racial epithet? Can you find it for me? Can you find for me where James Eastland was running around calling black people the N-word? See, most of the white supremacists don't talk like that. John Wilkes Booth killed Abraham Lincoln. He also served as a soldier in the Confederacy. This guy was a stomped down white supremacist, top to bottom. And yet you can't find any places where he was running around using racial epithets either, or saying that all black people are criminals and thugs, or this, that, and a third. In fact, if you look at the writings of John Wilkes Booth, he said exactly the opposite. He sounded exactly like Abraham Lincoln. Their attitude regarding black people was exactly the same. John Wilkes Booth wrote that as far as he was concerned, why, some of my best friends are black, and I don't really have anything against black people. I just believe that the races must remain separated so that the white man's natural position as predominant is not threatened because God wants it that way, this, that, and a third. And Abraham Lincoln said that he would see the superior position assigned to the white race. So when it came to the issue of black people, John Wilkes Booth and Abraham Lincoln were on the exact same page. See, racists almost never come out and say all black people are this and that. Racists almost never do that. Instead, what they've been doing and been using for the longest time are the use of proxies, stand-ins for black people. When it comes time to talk about the Central Park Five, that's a stand-in for all black youth, especially black males. O.J. Simpson is a proxy for black people. Bill Cosby is a proxy for black people. R. Kelly is a proxy for black people. When you say welfare queens, that means black women. See, when you say welfare queens, you're not going to be talking about the fact that it's most white people who are on welfare. That doesn't get brought up. Or that the most welfare fraud takes place as a result of white organizations, particularly religious ones. We're not going to be bringing that up. See, when we talk about welfare queens, it's not about welfare at all. It's just about finding yet another rhetorical angle to be used to demonize black people. Welfare isn't the issue at all. Black people are the issue. So when YouTube puts up crap like everyone in such and such group are all criminals and thugs, they know full well the escape hatch is the word everyone, because practically nobody says everyone. Whenever they're attacking black people, especially black men as criminals and thugs, they're usually referring to some specific incident. Except everybody knows that they'll then use that incident, but only against black people. So if they really wanted to be truthful, then they would have said such and such group are all criminals and thugs. Now they could have said that, but it's like, nah, this is not about trying to make sure that you curtail anti-black rhetoric. This is all about providing an escape hatch, plausible deniability. So you see the game that's being played here? You see what the hell it is that these bastards are doing? All of this is just a pretense for the mass deplatforming of the new voices of black media. I told you about how Louis Farrakhan was just the beginning. I told you Facebook went full Nazi. And that this was actually supposed to be the thin end of the wedge. Well, now you see that they're driving that wedge. You see what they're doing. Google's spread a lot of cheer around Capitol Hill. And as far as they're concerned, they spread enough money where hopefully the threat of government regulation will be minimal, if not eliminated altogether. But in the meanwhile, they've got their social agenda that they got to pursue. And all of these black people online who have been threatening the natural order of the racist fraud calling itself democracy in America, who have been actually threatening to get black people our piece of the rock. Everybody else got their piece of Plymouth Rock, and black people ain't even had pebbles. Nah, we're coming for our piece of the rock. It's going to be a hell of a big one. But YouTube's looking and going, hell, maybe we can't stop these niggers, but we can certainly slow them down. And that's what this is about. They understand the tide of history that we represent. We're the tide of history that's going to wash white supremacy away. They see that the day of reckoning is almost here. And this is yet another pathetic, half-baked attempt to try to keep that day at bay just a little while longer. This is the plan. So who knows, folks? I told you that that black empowerment, at least in the political sphere, was not going to come into its own until it demonstrated that it was able to exercise power over white candidates and over white organizations. YouTube looked at that and said, yeah, the way we have been exercising power over you. Well, we may not be able to stop it, but we damn sure don't have to help you get there. We damn sure don't have to let our platform be used to spread a message of freedom and empowerment for black people. We ain't got to help you do it. This was not done in order to do black people any favors. This was done to reinforce YouTube's anti-black policies across the board. And you better believe that the white supremacists who look at this, they have been able to look at it and see the exact same thing that I've seen. YouTube has not done anything that's actually going to threaten white supremacy. They've gotten the escape clauses and escape hatches, and they've got the loopholes written in. All of it baked into the cake. But they do know this is going to be used against black people. All of this was tailor-made. They might as well call this the anti-black media rules of YouTube. No black media talk whatsoever. None of this empowerment stuff. Stop telling black people that they're supposed to be bowing out of this political fraud calling itself the electoral system. Stop telling black people that. We know what kind of trouble that you're trying to put out there, buddy. We know exactly what you guys are trying to do. Don't let anyone tell you that this is anything other than an attack on us, because we're the ones who all these rules are written for. Nobody else has been making as much noise as us, and nobody else has been having such a huge impact on the political landscape that we've been having. All the talk that I've been doing showing people that not only did we crash Kamala Harris's campaign, but now we're taking on Joe Biden, and you see what's happening. They're looking and going, damn. They're cutting off one of white supremacy's two political legs. You got the right leg and the left leg, and they're breaking that left leg in half. And the worst part about it is they're making it clear that there's going to be a ransom to be paid if you want them not to just amputate that leg altogether. If you don't want black folks to just crush that leg into a trillion irreparable pieces, they're putting a ransom. Yeah, we're putting a freaking bounty on the head of white supremacy. We're making it where white supremacy won't be allowed to live. But if you want the crash landing to not be completely and thoroughly catastrophic, well, you're going to have to come up off them ducats. That's what it means. So YouTube's looking and going, you niggers, okay, you've proven yourself to be a hell of a lot more savvy than we gave you credit for. But you know what? You're still in our house, buddy. Our house, our rules. A lot of people, no doubt at this point, are saying we certainly need an alternative to YouTube. Hell, we needed an alternative 12 years ago. So far, a viable, real alternative, a actual one that's not a joke, a alternative that actually works, and not one that claims to but actually doesn't. I won't mention any names, because some of these people who were spam posting and cutting and pasting garbage on Twitter feeds and such, these guys, they realize they ain't getting any traction, and that's because they're not a viable alternative. They're a joke. We don't need a joke. And please don't tell me, this is the reason why, and I guess I'm just going to come straight up the middle and say it. Yeah, I heard about the billionaire who decided that he was going to be paying the black kids at Howard University or Brown or wherever the hell it was. He was going to be paying the graduating classes tuition. First thing you should have been asking is why the hell the tuition bills were so high. Damn sure ain't because they were getting a quality education. And second thing is, okay, it's great that he made it where these kids hopefully won't be having college debt saddling them for the next 10 to 20 years. But the question is, then what? Okay, they spent a few years in school, but did they come out better for it? There's no jobs waiting for them. They don't have these skill sets or the necessary capital in order to start businesses. So other than make sure that they're not saddled with debt, which should not be sniffed at, it's fine that he did that. But the question then becomes, now what? They've just lost 2 to 4 years, maybe 6 years that they're not going to be able to get back. And what the hell are they going to have to hit the ground running? They don't have the necessary requisites that their white counterparts have in order to make sure that they can just hit the ground running and get out into the world and start taking their piece of it. So as far as I'm concerned, it's all well and good that you pay the kids college debt, but the real thing is it doesn't solve the actual problem. Their college debt is a symptom of the problem. Their parents didn't have businesses that they owned. Their parents didn't have any sort of capital that created passive income so they can make money even when they sleep. That's why their kids ran into huge debt in the first place. Because mom and dad didn't have the money to be able to pay for their college. And their parent didn't, and their parents didn't either. You solved a symptom of the problem. Huge college debt for these black kids is a symptom of the problem. The problem itself is that we do not have things that we own, that we control, and that we can pass down. We do not have businesses. That's what I want you guys to take away from this little video essay. Yes, YouTube is racist as hell. What the hell else is new? We've known that for 12 years now. Yes, this is them codifying what they hope is going to be the utter annihilation of the new voices of black media. What else is new? YouTube's psychopathic anti-black racism is merely a symptom of the problem. The problem itself is we require a platform that we control, one that we are able to build on our own. It has to be a viable one, a strong one. But I am not sitting here wondering about how many black people are going to be flocking to it. It is not going to be the masses of black people who get the job done. Consider this. On my channel, all you have to do is merely show up and you can see all of the content that happen to be there. And yet, even with that, you will have people who all YouTube, they know that all they have to do is simply not notify you about a video, or if they decide to disable some features on a video and they have effectively destroyed it. They've effectively removed it. They know that. They know that, unfortunately, unless somebody just basically smacks a lot of black folks over the head and says, "Yoo-hoo, here's the message," they're not going to go looking for it. They can't be bothered to. A lot of black people see the work that I do and that the other new voices of black media do as being nothing more than politically oriented entertainment. And I'm telling you that we're in a life and death struggle, that we are losing. I do not have the patience or the willingness to hold on to a bunch of hangers-on. We're in a fight for our lives. We need the doers, not the listeners. So please miss me with the talk about some well-to-do black person who's doing this, that, and a third. When it comes to the new voices of black media, I'm not interested in trying to get some billionaire support or multimillionaire. While it would be helpful to have somebody who basically has deep pockets and is willing to actually put it behind something that's going to empower and help black people. At the end of the day, you got too many black folks out there. By the time they get to the point where they've got that kind of money and they've made their money off of basically being admitted to the right cocktail parties and having the right social connections to an extent, or being allowed to hang around at this or that gathering with the people whose skin is the right color. By the time they've gotten to that point, that's where their associations are. It's where their dealings are. It's where their connections are. It's where their heart is and where their wallet is. You'll know the difference between the black people who are actually about black empowerment and the ones who basically are black people trying to pretend like they're Sally Struthers. That's what got me about this black billionaire who paid those kids college debt. To me, I'm sitting here thinking, man, this guy must think that he's basically Sally Struthers or something, because that seems to be who the real audience was. Whenever I see a black person who's making a big show of, I'm going to be doing a school here or what have you, that to me smells like like somebody who's trying to be a dark-skinned white philanthropist. That's what it smells like to me. They're trying to impress their white social buddies, who is the folks who they really want to associate with. And they're going to show, see, I care about those little pot-bellied darkies as much as you do. Yeah, those little poor inner city kids, you see, I can give some money to them too. Oh, you guys will be talking about me at the next cheese and croissant function, right? That's what it smells like to me. I could be wrong, but I rarely am wrong about these kind of things. You'll know the difference between the real ones and the fake ones. The real ones are going to be the ones who actually are part of the black empowerment sphere, and the fake ones won't be. You can tell who the black folks are who are actually serious about helping black folks because they are the ones who get behind the real voices of black media, the new voices. They're the ones who get behind the black media. Everybody else, forget about it. They're part of the gatekeeper club. They're part of that group of folks who nobody listens to, nobody gives a damn about. Clowns like Joy the Jackass Reed and Angela Rye with lettuce and tomatoes on the side and Roly-Poly Martin, these guys will cheer this kind of stuff, and the main reason happens to be they know that this doesn't apply to them. They are one of white supremacy's sanctioned Negroes. That's why I call them the Black Bootlicks. I wanted a title that would have a nice ring to it so you guys will remember it. But the Black Bootlicks, they'll look and welcome this kind of stuff because as far as they're concerned, we're the ones who chop them off at the knees. And they know that they can't get anything without white supremacy handing it to them. And to them, that's what this is. Oh, baby, white supremacy is coming to my rescue. Thank God. Because I was over here on life support and white supremacy didn't come to my rescue. White supremacy is not going to help these clowns at all. White supremacy is not doing this with the intent that it's going to help the black bootlegs. This is white supremacy going, damn. I guess if you want something done, you got to do it yourself. That's what white supremacy is looking and saying. As far as they're concerned, they are now left with no other option than to come at us directly and make no bones about it. So this is actually a sign of defeat for the black bootlicks. White supremacy is not doing this for the sake of picking their fat out of the fryer. They're doing this as a sign of, okay, fine then. You niggers got our attention and this is the response. But the question is, what is the response of the real black people sphere? What's our response going to be? There's not going to be any black benefactors waiting in the wings. If they were going to show up, they would have done it by now. And we're not going to get around the fact that at the end of the day, we do require platforms and venues that we own and control top to bottom. This is the reason why I made such a big deal about the enthusiasm gap. And I've been telling you guys for a few years now, you've been asking, what was Professor Truth asking of you guys all these years? And I said, I'm not going to go into details, but the truth of the matter is, stay available. Keep listening. Stay available. And the day is closer than you might think as far as what the response needs to be, the intelligent response, one that puts us firmly in the driver's seat. But we're going to separate the real from the phony. We're going to separate the doers from the listeners, from the people who just want to show up because I guess they're at work. And they figured, hey, we got internet access at work. Yeah, I love to listen to this Professor Truth while I'm at work. Oh, what he says is just so entertaining. It's so stimulating because it's so entertaining, so engrossing. Oh, he's got such a way with words. Well, I'm not here to keep you entertained. I am not here to help you pass the time on a lazy work day. I am not here to give you something to do when the boss ain't looking. It started off as a witness and a warning. Now it is a call to action. But the people who are still in listening mode, you guys stay right the hell where you are. You guys were never going to take us anywhere anyway. I am not worried about what YouTube tries to do. Truth be told, in a sense, and I'm going to say this, and I guess I have to preface it this way because a lot of black folks don't like to listen, although that's the main thing they come here for, and yet it's the thing that they do the least. I guess it's just another sign of us being consistently inconsistent. But you better understand that our big problem, as I see it, the biggest problem facing us in a lot of ways is not white supremacy at all. Truth be told, in a very real sense, there is no white supremacy. There has only been the failure of black action. There has only been the failure of the black diaspora to get its act together. There has only been the failure of those of us who came out of slavery to get on code and to crack down on those who refuse to be on code. That's where the consistently inconsistent part comes in. That's a failure when you're consistently inconsistent. If your car only starts once a week and you don't even know what day that's going to be, that car is not merely inconsistent, it has failed. You're not going to sit there and go, let me keep this car. It only works one day a week, but one day a week's enough for me. No, you'll say, I need a new car. I need a car that consistently starts. Well, the exact same thing goes for black empowerment. Black empowerment cannot be something that only happens when Trayvon Martin is murdered, or when Dylan Roof carries out a slaughter at Mother Emanuel Church, or when YouTube carries out its next anti-black onslaught. That cannot be when those cannot be the only times when black empowerment happens. Black empowerment's got to be 24/7, and that's where the enthusiasm gap comes in. Are you excited about black empowerment? I can tell how excited you are based on your level of engagement, and you're the only one who determines that. I cannot find a way to curtail or otherwise be able to cut off or minimize your level of engagement. That's up to you. You're the one who determines that. And in too many cases, too many black people have decided our level of engagement will be once every blue moon, or whenever the mood hits, or, well, it's going to be when I'm feeling particularly engaged, which will of course be very rarely. Nobody else is going to be carrying your load. When it comes time to fight white supremacy, it's like having an army, and that's exactly what it is. We are at war with white supremacy. It's damn sure at war with us. And every soldier's got to carry his own pack, and every soldier's got to carry his own weapon, and every soldier's got to carry his own ammunition. Nobody's going to carry your pack for you. Nobody's going to carry your weapon for you. Nobody's going to carry your ammunition for you. If you don't do it, that's okay. You're called a straggler, and we leave stragglers behind. What YouTube is doing is a symptom of the problem. The real problem is the fact that as black people, we have been kidding around and joking around when it comes to having our own so that we're not subject to these kind of attacks. Why do people even use YouTube in the first place? Well, the main reason that people use YouTube is because YouTube happens to be the place where everybody goes to. Now, they should, if you would think that people would be hungry to go somewhere else, but obviously not. And YouTube knows that. They know that if people have a choice between a supposedly free platform that they can go to and post content, and everybody goes there because they've been conditioned to go there, and, well, it's the place where they find most of the stuff that they're looking for, one-stop shopping. Well, people are going to keep going to that free platform where you're seeing now what the price of free is. Ain't nothing free in this world, folks. There's always a price. And if you got a problem with ponying up some money to ensure that you have a reliable black outlet that ain't going to pull crap like this, you ain't got to pull your punches, you can say exactly what you think, exactly the way you think it. If you think that ponying up a little bit of money for that is too much of a problem, fine then. You just wait until YouTube goes ahead and ethnically cleanses all voices of black empowerment. Just go ahead and wait for that. How much do you think that's going to cost? Would you like to put a dollar figure on that? How much will you pay then to have to actually get back the voice that you could have and should have had all along? See, the white supremacists understand exactly what they're doing. We're the ones who seem to be confused. And you're seeing now the confusion carries a heavy price. The bad guys have not just been sitting on their hands. They've been planning, and this is what it comes down to next. Deplatforming, ain't no such thing as deplatforming. It's just ethnically cleansing these social media networks of black empowerment voices, or anybody who's saying anything that sounds like it might help black people to straighten our act up and get us on code and to enforce that code of conduct. I told you the most dangerous thing that we could do was to take control of the social discourse in the black community. When you control the social discourse, what happens is instead of talking about the new Jays or talking about the new LeBrons or talking about Nicki Minaj or talking about Rihanna or talking about what's hot at the multiplex, instead you're talking about black empowerment. When that happens, you take control of the social discourse, and now what happens is you take control of the events. Instead of black people wasting their time talking about your chakras and talking about phony baloney pseudo spiritual nonsense, instead you start talking about power, wealth, and influence, things that we own, we control, and that we pass down. You're talking about tangibles and a zero tolerance policy for any so-called politician who doesn't come up to us with tangibles in hand. When you start talking about that, you're talking about putting black folks in the driver's seat. And when you have black folks, yeah, a lot of black folks, if you give them some tangibles, they won't do anything with it. But the thing is, it ain't the masses that change anything. It's always going to be that small core group. And this is about making sure that small core group has nothing, or at the very least doesn't have the requisite resources necessary to be able to impose their will. And that's what this is about, making sure that this doesn't change, to stop the mission of black media now that it's gaining steam and it's threatening the machine, and white supremacy is looking and going, damn, they're hurting us, and we don't have an answer for this. You got YouTube and the rest of the white supremacist social media outlets going, sure, we may not have a solution for it, but we definitely have something we can do. That's what this is about. So please do not think that you're going to be able to get your black media for free. You're a damn fool and a liar, and you're an idiot if you think that. That has never been true. Google did not establish YouTube in order to promote black empowerment. They created it to promote white supremacy in all of its various guises and forms. And now that there are enough black people who are speaking loudly enough to be heard, they're looking and going, we got to pull the plug on this. And we better go ahead and get our lies straight. We better go ahead and get some rules here so when we get dragged into court, we can point and say, see, we didn't just, why, you can't say that we singled out black people. Why, we even put examples up that said if you say that all black people are criminals and thugs. Yeah. They're setting this one up something smooth, but the question is, what are we setting up? I have no interest in looking up 10 years from now and still arm wrestling with the racists over at Google or Twitter or Facebook about what the hell they're doing to try to find a way to censor us today. I have no interest in fighting the same battle 10 years from now that we were fighting 10 years ago. But whether or not that remains the case, whether or not YouTube has any power over us at all, that is going to come down to you. Your level of engagement is what determines whether or not YouTube is relevant. And not yet relevant in the general sense. Hell, if you want to waste your time chasing around for the latest movie trailer, or you want to be talking about whatever the hell you like to watch on cable TV, or who's beefing with whom in the world of hip hop, or the Real Housewives, or who gives a damn, if that's where your focus is, you don't need black empowerment. You don't deserve it. But for those of you who are concerned about whether or not the next generation of black people are even going to be able to live, or whether or not we're going to get wiped out, then you better start getting serious about what you want. And if you want black media, then you're not going to get it for free. In fact, you shouldn't want it for free. It should be a point of pride for you that you point out that, hey, the bad guys are willing to put money behind what they believe in, and what they believe in is our extermination. The bad guys, when they see something that they want to change, they look around and start writing a check. You think that did you really believe that taking down Kamala Harris was going to go unnoticed? I mean, unnoticed in the sense that white supremacy was not going to look and say, we can't let this happen anymore. Yeah, they'll let a black woman, half black woman, get taken down. But now that you're saying, oh, we're going to start exerting some influence, we're going to start penalizing and punishing these white politicians. Uh-oh. You're exercising power over white people? No, you will not. The hell you will. And this is the response. They know that we're not bots, and that's the problem. A bot is nothing. It doesn't exist. Black empowerment could exist, and the black media does exist. And this is their goal, to stomp it out now before this threat to white supremacy decides to put any more heads on its trophy wall, before it starts building. But this isn't new. Their antagonism and hostility and vitriol against us isn't new. We know all this. It's not a matter of when are the bad guys going to get tired of attacking us. They've been doing it for 500 years. It's pretty safe to say these guys don't get tired. This is apparently something, a guilty pleasure for them that just energizes them day after day. They can do this forever. The real question is, what the hell are we going to do so that white supremacy's media outlets online do not have the ability to be able to harm us? It's like Sun Tzu said, do not count on your enemy not attacking you. Do not count on your enemy not showing up for battle. Do not count on your enemy not fighting hard or not fighting well. Count on your enemy to show up. Count on your enemy to attack. Count on your enemy to fight in battle, and count on him to fight well. Count on him to have some good strategies. But your goal, your mission is to have better strategies, to have him outthought and outfought. You cannot control whether or not your enemy shows up to fight, but you can control whether or not you're prepared for him. And that's the question that's being put to us now. Are we willing to pay the price that power demands? Because white supremacy, what they're doing right now with this garbage, this is just tiddlywinks. This is not really putting any pain on us. But this is a precursor for what they intend to do next, because a large part of this is going to be making sure that black people are being robbed of a platform that we helped to build and establish, and that we would use to sound the alarm. That's what this is about. Oh, you guys have been using this platform to sound the alarm. Well, we're not going to cut you off overnight, but we're going to do it by degrees. Until eventually, no more of that black empowerment talk, huh? I guess they must have stopped. Well, that's because white supremacy, that doesn't really exist. And these guys were making too much out of it anyway. And people saw right through them. That's what happened. People got tired of hearing that kind of talk. People saw right through them. That's what really happened. Like, that's the way that they'll tell it. And because of the fact that they own the platform, that's going to be the version of current events that wins the day and that gets repeated. That's going to eventually become the official version of history, the authorized version of history, which is nothing more than the authorized version of white supremacy. Oh, that black media, that was a flash in the pan. Those guys went away. They were just a bunch of extremists. They were a bunch of Russian bots. They weren't that important. They didn't matter. Hey, if they were that important, they would have been around, but they're not anymore because that whole thing just burned out. Now we can get back to business as usual. White supremacy is attempting to insulate itself and protect itself from the truth, from reality. They're hoping that they can keep us at bay. Whether or not they are successful at this, whether or not they are right, depends on you. This is not about YouTube. It ain't even about the black media. There would be no black media without you guys. This is about trying to find a way to starve you for the truth and make sure that your mind goes back to sleep, because we woke enough of you up to the point now where we can have an impact on major party elections. And as goes America, so goes the world. This is about trying to put you guys' brains back to sleep again by silencing the messengers. They're counting on you guys being apathetic. They're counting on you guys going, you were okay until you started saying something about money now. The reality is, the message that we put out there, this is not going to appeal to the safe Negroes who white supremacy gave a big paycheck to. The Negroes who get their daily bread from white supremacy, this is not going to appeal to them. These guys don't even really live in fear of white supremacy. They have become white supremacists in their minds. So as far as they're concerned, they hate this message every bit as much as YouTube does. They hate it every bit as much as Facebook does. The only people who love this message are you guys. So stop waiting for somebody else to ride in on a black horse and do the heavy lifting for you. You should be proud to do the heavy lifting. You should revel in the fact that you're showing that we got big muscles, we got big arms, big chests, and big backs, and we're strong enough to not merely carry the load for ourselves, but we're strong enough to knock white supremacy over in due time. We should be reveling in the fact that we're getting stronger, reveling in the fact that we have enough pride in ourselves that we're willing to put resources behind the rhetoric. Yes, black media is under threat, but there is no threat that white supremacy can bring. There is no threat so great from white supremacy that it can overcome an energized and determined black community.